Morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain? Who could complain on a day like today? Nobody. Nobody can complain. Every day, walking with Christ. Good morning. Good morning, you Maxis, and God bless you all. And again, I got a complaint. I do have one complaint. Why can't I read the comments that get preloaded from everyone in the waiting room? What happened to that? We don't know. We don't know what happened to it. It's gone. Long gone. Every day, Walking with Christ says, good morning, you Maxis, and God bless you all from Wisconsin. Brr. Yeah, I saw it's getting cold up there. Everyone's getting a blast of winter this weekend, it looks like. Good morning and good days. Up BTC says, bon matin. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Hello, B for victory. I hope you're doing well. As I said, I'm doing great. Awesome background, Nolan. Well, we love it here. We love it here, Kevin. We got a breeze coming through. My God, I just told you all the secrets to the universe. Too tired to type it again. We love it. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jevy. Hope you're doing well. Double B made it, indeed. Let me just acknowledge I got proof of sunrise. It happened. Here it is on the east coast of North America in the Caribbean Sea. That's Carlisle Bay. It's reflecting the beautiful sunshine. That's why we got a turquoise water today. And just as amazing, Bitcoin is running. So we're good. And I brought a coffee. Let's talk about what's new, huh? Jason, good morning from cold New Hampshire. Yeah, I was checking. I keep a list of all the cities I've lived in my weather app, and I check them all every day, right? Just, touchstones and things like that. I don't check them every day, but if I check the weather, then you'll happen to notice what's going on around the world. I've lived in plenty of cities, so it's a pretty neat exercise. And when I saw what was going on the East Coast today and through the weekend, I said, yeeks. Good thing I'm not headed up soon, but my time in Barbados is quickly coming to an end. I've only got about another month here. But I will say I'm starting to get jealous of the weather up north. That's when I start saying, for about a week now, my whole family's been like, I just wish I had a cool breeze. So it's coming. I'm starting to get jealous about what's happening in New York, seeing the sprouts, seeing springtime. Can't wait to see spring. I'll be up for it. Can't wait. Jason asks, Nolan, when is your next book on the upcoming election going to be available? Happy Wednesday, everyone in the Breakup. Jason, I'm glad you asked that question. It will be available for Easter weekend. You know me, I like to time these releases for holidays. So the Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management was, of course, released on Thanksgiving weekend in the United States. This one will be ready for you all for the Easter break. And it's pretty much ready. I've got a few things that I'm doing. No one has seen it yet, so I might want to get a little bit of review before then. But it's strong enough to publish. Maybe I'll do some revisions at a later time, but it's a pretty powerful thing. It's quite different than the Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management. It just didn't come out the same, but you'll have some good reading. There's a lot of orange pill tips and frames and stuff like that, nudges that you can use. Heavily focused on stuff we talk about here a lot, though. Election, the symmetry and the opportunity Bitcoiners have to give an upgrade to American thought by mimetically spreading don't trust, verify, that we all understand from the trade-offs between crypto and Bitcoin. We can actually apply that frame and share it with Americans. And if that becomes mimetically ingrained in their brain, guess what we get in 2024? Hyper Bitcoinization, which we're into that. We're into hyper Bitcoinization. We love the hyper Bitcoinization. But you know what else we love? We love Moscow time. What's the fakest news I could find? This one's pretty good. Sirens are blaring. UN climate report says 2023 was off the charts. It's off the charts, everyone. Oh, we're going to be talking about Christine Blasey Ford today a little bit. Daniel, I will definitely be there. And I'll be speaking at the show. So I shall see you there. I'll be freshly back from Hong Kong and Qatar when I'm there, but I will definitely be there. So let everyone know, and it's gonna be a great time. I can't wait. All right, so The Atlantic. This is what we got. Christine Blasey Ford's new memoir places her Senate testimony in the wider context of her life. And as her story goes on, it comes to read as an indictment, not of one person, but of a form of politics that sees stories as weapons in an endless war. So they've got some time for context here, right? They've got some time for context. What about this headline? They were adding some context to the bloodbath fake news story over the weekend. The bloodbath story, it keeps going. It's the gift that keeps on giving. This is what we got 2 days ago. Context only makes Trump's bloodbath comment worse. It only makes it worse, everyone. Here's a new take on it altogether. Trump's violent language towards electric vehicles. Former President Trump has deployed increasingly aggressive talk about electric vehicles and their effect on the American economy. And Mike Solana just wanted to give you some contrast. So he reminded you of the time when an electric vehicle was destroyed, the self-driving cars in San Francisco. And this is what the news had to say about electric vehicles and violence towards them back then. Vandalism and defacement are time-honored parts of the human experience. We love it. We love it. We got more Trump stuff, though. There's always more Trump stuff. This one's pretty good. The ACLU said that America would look like, they're talking about what America would look like after a second Trump term. I think we could very much be on the brink of losing our democracy and losing certain rights and liberties that would be lost for a generation. Oh, wouldn't that be a shame? We're going to be talking about all the rights we have. Oh, we have so many rights and so much democracy in America. Much. I'm not in a patriotic mood today, by the way. We're not loving America today at all. This one's really good. Semaphore. The viral bloodbath clip and the rise of the liberal video influencers. So this is the bloodbath. Listen to what they say about it. This is excellent stuff. The day before this day. Oh no, I'm not going to read the beginning. This is great. So they're actually quoting Aaron Rupar. Aaron Rupar gets quotes here. So listen to what they say. The problem that he ran into with the bloodbath thing, and they're talking about the Rupar edits here, was that he gave all these networks a very easy headline and frame. Rupar told Semaphore. Rupar, if you didn't know, he's the guy who clipped the Very Fine People video and spread it, right? Oh, by the way, Jevy and all you Minnesotans, he's from Minnesota. Aaron Rupar is from Minnesota, which is just disgusting. Rupar told Semaphore. Rupar talked frequently with Asen. So Asen was the guy who did the Rupar video this time over direct messages after the Ohio speech. He recalled Asen saying it was kind of boring, as he suggested there was a lot of potential content. In the end, Asen's bloodbath crew clip drove days of news. They're happy about it. They think they won this one. Well, I mean, no one over on the other end hears about what we say, so you never know. Maybe they did. We compete in that we're posting a lot of similar stuff for a similar audience, said Rupar. But it's not like it's a zero-sum game. There's room for everybody to make Rupar videos, Rupar says. We need to be creative and move fast to contrast the president's optimistic agenda for the future with the extreme agenda of the Republican officials who want to take us back in time. Aaron, Ron, and many others are on the front lines making sure the American people know the truth of what is at stake. Amazing, huh? So good. This one was great. So, Congressman Ted Lieu, I don't know if he's mentally ill or retarded or a liar. It's really hard to tell sometimes. I don't know what he is. But he actually said this in public yesterday. I think he is deliberately lying. He's like trying to take the what's his name again? Peter Schiff role of all, lie about anything, right? Not everyone will lie about anything. It's not easy to find someone who will just lie about anything. So I think he's trying to do it. But again, I don't know if he's just dumb. I can't tell the difference. So here's what he says. The best way to combat fake news is for people to watch MSNBC because they report real news all the time. They report real news all the time. All right. Now, we're always looking for Moscow Time entries that will one day go into a Moscow Time museum of fake news to underline the years and years of psychological abuse that American citizens were subjected to from the fake news media and the fiat industrial complex and the fiat propagation machine. Remember, the fiat propagation machine is propagated through propaganda, right? So that's just the way it works. But they actually published this in the New York Times today. This is not a joke, okay? This is a real New York Times headline. I'm not going to add any context whatsoever, right? This is a pure Moscow Time entry. I'm just going to read what they said. It turns out the deep state is actually kind of awesome. As America closes in on a major election, mistrust is brewing around the mysterious government entity that's now denounced in the scary sounding terms, the deep state and the swamp. What do these words even mean? They ask in the New York Times. What do they even mean? We went on a road trip to find out. As we met the Americans who are being dismissed as public enemies, we discovered that they are us. They like Taylor Swift. They like bachata. They go to bed at night watching Star Trek reruns. They go to work and do their jobs, saving us from Armageddon. The deep state is kind of awesome, guys. Don't worry about it. It's just the best. We love it. It's so cool. So I don't, maybe it's too on the nose. Maybe it doesn't get hung in our museum of Moscow time one day, but it's a pretty good one. It's really great, right? Really great. All right. So speaking of crazy deep state, that's awesome, right? The awesome deep state. Ron Paul went on Tucker Carlson yesterday, and we love Ron Paul, right? I had him at a couple events. I've had my, I do the picture with him every time I see him. I love it. I got a whole bunch of Ron Paul pictures. I don't know if you guys know this, but I have this sort of sedimentary archaeological way of looking at the history of Bitcoin, and I find it predictive, and that sedimentary archaeological strata way that I look at it is human migration into Bitcoin, human capital migration into Bitcoin. Like, what were you doing, right? What were you doing when you got into Bitcoin? And there's actually a pretty easy frame that shows how people entered, because they came from certain careers and certain backgrounds. And you can actually sort of use that to tell where Bitcoin's headed once you see professionals peel off from their industry and enter Bitcoin. Now, the first professionals that peered off from what they were doing into Bitcoin were the cryptographers. Of course, they got the mailing list from Satoshi, and you could see them all sort of have their brains light on fire for what it is. And then you saw a huge migration into it. These are the cypherpunks, right? They were the first. The second group that entered were the Ron Paul refugees from the 2012 campaign. These were the political libertarians who heard about what was going on. Right. So these guys came from the 2008 Ron Paul campaign. They ran it right through the Occupy Wall Street thing, which began in, I guess, 2011, 2012 time. So this group of people, I would say, are the second group. They were the libertarians who understood the gold standard aspect of all of this. So Ron Paul, from an early time, had a huge presence in Bitcoin because a lot of people that entered Bitcoin came from his campaigns, came from his political thought. They might not even have been professionally associated with his campaigns. Now, I came in on this wave. Now, I was not involved in the Ron Paul campaign, but I was not really a libertarian, but more on the small government, anti-prohibitionist, conservative movement in Canada under, at the time, Maxime Bernier was kind of the leader of it. He's gone on to get way into this race thing in Canada with the People's Party and all this kind of stuff. He's an idiot in the end. I got to be honest, that Maxime Bernier, if you're a friend, I know him. He's a friend of mine, hang out with him all the time, used to anyway. But I spent 2 hours with this guy at called the Albany Club. It's a conservative private club in Toronto, hangout spot. And I had known him for years. And in 2016, Bitcoin is at what, $500? And I'm telling him he's running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. And I knew him from this old era of Ron Paul stuff. He was a gold bug, a gold standard guy, a separate money and state guy. I think he's marginally still there. But I'm telling you, I spent 2 hours with him and I gave him a trick. The trick was simple. I said, say you're going to take Bitcoin donations and then make them deny you, right? Make them lure Elections Canada into a thing where they're like, oh, you can't do that. And I said, if that happens, you're going to be just drowning in Bitcoin. The Bitcoiners are going to see you as the most important person. Now, I had this trick for him, which was that you're going to get urban delegates, which are not really the way it works in Canada like the Republicans, the Conservative Party has a more grassroots leadership nomination process, and it works exactly like our version of the Electoral College. So every riding gets 10 delegates. Doesn't matter if the riding is conservative. It's just there's 500 delegates, 500 and something election counties in Canada. And you take those counties and you plug them in. You give them each 10 delegates, and those 10 delegates vote for the leader. And so I told him, the delegates out in Alberta or very big conservative strongholds are fought over as the prize, but there's these free ones available in the city that no one really ever goes after in Toronto and Montreal. And I told him, you would get religiously motivated psychopath people that would vote for you as delegate, that would whip anyone out, and they will give you money, right? Because they're into this. And he was like, oh, I don't want to do it. So you can forget him. He's mentally ill. He's still not into Bitcoin after all these years. Imagine. What's he doing, right? I was giving him shit to read about Bitcoin in 2013, 2014, never read it. And I know he never read it because his EA, the person who would travel all around the world and with him, was the best man at my wedding, someone I've known since childhood. So I was filtering him all of this stuff. He just was not bothering, not curious, not interested. So to his loss, he would have been the prime minister had he listened to me. He ended up losing the nomination vote by one vote. By one vote. Imagine, all he needed was one psychopath Bitcoiner from anywhere in Canada to get involved in his candidacy in 2016, and he would have won the leadership in 2017, and he could have beaten Trudeau at the time. Well, who knows about the cheating? But anyway, the point here, back to the crux of it, there was a huge... and if you want to take my system of prediction, I'll tell you the sediments. It went from cryptographers to the political folks, mostly the Ron Paul constituency. Then it went to Wall Street. They were non-sentimental, very different than the people who came at it from the cypherpunks and the political people. They were just there because it was tradable, and you saw people peeling off because it was happening, right? So they didn't care about the bigger movement and the philosophy. They're like, this thing trades, it's not going to zero because people believe in it, I'm going to trade it. So they were a whole different scene and very interesting group. From there, you got the artists, the Pepe start after that, and then you start seeing the energy folks come in, and that's sort of where we are in the human capital migration cycle. So and then all of these different human capital verticals are just becoming more and more powered up by the Bitcoiners going into it. But anyway, let's go back to the Ron Paul folks, right? So this is a very important constituency. Ron Paul has been around Bitcoin for a very long time. And yesterday he did a brilliant interview with Tucker Carlson. So first of all, he shared a frame that we share all the time here on the Breakup, which is that civilian control of the government was lost during the Kennedy assassination. Now, it could have been before that, but I've been using that frame for a long time to say we can definitively say from the Kennedy assassination on, we do not have civilian control of the US military. Some unseen force, the fake deep state that's kind of awesome that they're going on about in the New York Times today, has been in control. And so he was talking about that last night using, frames that we often share here. He says, the date I say it was concrete that there was a coup and we lost our government was November 22nd, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Ron Paul finds it astonishing and despicable that the director of the CIA at the time, Alan Dulles, was appointed to the Warren Commission, which was tasked with investigating Kennedy's assassination. So the guy who was responsible for the murder was investigating the murder. This is something that a lot of people don't bring up often. He was the number one suspect. He was fired by Kennedy just before the assassination as the CIA head. So he's fired as the CIA head. So just an aggrieved employee, right? That was enough. So he goes in there. Of course, Gerald Ford is a big part of it. That's how they run the second coup that they run on Nixon years later. Nixon was not part of their deep state apparatus. And when he came in 68, it was a big problem to them, right? That's why they had to destroy him. That's why Gerald Ford was a plant. You got to look at these vice presidents as plants often, right? Which is, again, why I don't believe the Bloomberg story yesterday about Vivek not being the vice presidential candidate for Trump. It's Bloomberg, which is not a legitimate news source, right? Now, vice president is very hard to predict, but this time around, Trump needs a vice president that he can trust. Remember that Mike Pence was the first person to turn on Michael Flynn in the Trump administration way back in 2017, right? Mike Pence flipped on him then. The only reason that we got into this trouble with Flynn in the first place was because Mike Pence turned on him. And then, of course, Mike Pence yesterday saying, I'm not going to endorse Trump and all this shit. Absolute deep state scumbag, it looks like, right? A scumbag. So, and Gerald Ford was the scumbag in his time. And I think had a lot to do with what happened with the character assassination of Nixon. Now, remember, the character assassination route was chosen because they realized that the 1963 situation with Kennedy was too messy and too difficult to clean up, and they probably couldn't do it again. So the reason why they went with the character assassination and the fake news story of Watergate was because it was a better way to attack him, which is the exact battle plan they've used against Trump, right? It's been exactly that. It's been the Watergate style Nixon character assassination, and they went with the racist thing. They went with all of this really awful stuff, right? So indeed, that was one of the problems, right? Oh, dang, I missed one of the Moscow Times one on Liz Cheney. That's okay. Here's other people reacting to it. Ron Paul tells Tucker Carlson that we lost our republic when our government killed JFK and appointed one of the murderers to the Warren Commission. So a lot of people picking up on that today. Now, one of the things that happened as a result of the Warren Commission and everything that went into investigating the JFK assassination was the persuasion, right? Persuasion is a manipulation term of persuading before you end up persuading, like how you soften people's minds, how you basically trick them into coming to a conclusion so they feel like they've come to it on their own, but in fact, they've just been prompt engineered the same way you would prompt engineer an AI, right? Now, persuasion works in a formula. I've done several whiteboards about it, but it starts with this privileged moment, and then you induce a sort of fear, which brings up a response, and then the solution is right there. So you create this situation where the privileged moment of information hypnotizes you, right? You get hypnotized, then you see a risk introduced, and your mind will automatically try to solve that problem. And in so doing, you've been manipulated in exactly the same way we would prompt engineer an AI. You've been given inputs and stimulation, and then out it comes, right? So what we know happened after the JFK assassination is the New York Times and other ones that think the deep state is awesome, kind of awesome, right? All of these folks started getting involved in the persuasion around the word conspiracy theorist, right? That's actually where it comes from. We get Blake Habian here giving you the history of where the phrase conspiracy theorist came from. He was talking about it yesterday. Where did the phrase conspiracy, on X, of course, where did the phrase conspiracy theorist come from? Discrediting sensitive information. This is an old CIA memo, and he brings the memo from 1967 to all bureau chiefs around the world. This memo is the source of the phrase conspiracy theorist. After the Warren Commission published its conclusions about Kennedy's assassination, books were published casting doubt about the report's conclusions. The CIA instructed its agents to quash all debate by labeling anyone asking questions as conspiracy theorists. What was the CIA so afraid of? What's wrong with questions and debate? What were they trying to hide? Let me have a sip of coffee here. Why was it that anyone who questions the nature of COVID PSYOP-19 potential treatments and concerns about vaccines is labeled a conspiracy theorist? And so he brings the list here. Now, indeed, you can actually do one of the most interesting searches of the New York Times archives that will really tell you the whole story of the world we're in. You can understand through this one simple search of the New York Times archives exactly what world we're in. And that's if you type in conspiracy theorists. It never even shows up in the newspaper before this date. It doesn't exist. Before 1964, there's literally no reference to the concept of conspiracy theorist in the New York Times. From then on, it becomes heavily cited, heavily used, and is a form of persuasion. You can see the same thing happen with race relations in America after the 2008 meltdown. It was never that issue, right? It just turned into that completely, right? And it simply means breathing together, breathing together. So indeed, this conspiracy theorist label from then on was really important and really used to lobotomize and hypnotize Americans constantly. Now, I told you almost 2 years ago now, it's been a year and a half, I guess. I told you in November 2022, when Tucker Carlson did his famous interview about the Nixon character assassination and tied it to the Kennedy assassination in the same way that I just did, right? That it was too messy after the Kennedy thing, so they had to find a new way. He started this piece by saying that the 1972 election of Richard Nixon showed that Nixon is the most popular president in American history. Did you know that? No president won by more and had more popular support than Richard Nixon had in 1972. So what happened? Why did he not make it to the end of his term? He didn't make it to the end of his term because of this fake news story that they used. And it's one of the reasons why I first predicted that Robert F. Kennedy was going to be a major factor in the 2024 election, because he responded to Tucker Carlson's piece on Nixon and his uncle and his dad and all of this stuff by tying them together in the way that he did. At the time, Robert Kennedy called it the bravest instance of American journalism in 40, whatever his context was, 40 years or whatever, right? He said this is the bravest instance of U.S. journalism in a generation. And so right away I said, wait a minute, this is actually very interesting. The reason it's interesting is because Robert F. Kennedy, given the dramatic history that his family had, is literally immunized, vaccinated from the title of conspiracy theorist. Now, other people who have no brain or NPCs will still say, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. But anyone who has two brain cells to rub together understands that a person whose family was murdered, and sketchy examples of what happened, anyone whose family was murdered has a right to ask questions. Whether he knows the answers or not doesn't matter. You can't get mad at that guy for wanting to know what happened and to not trust the official byline. So it's a major thing, right? So yesterday, of course, we had Kennedy come out about this new CDC redacted paper, right? So the CDC actually published 148 pages about the Pfizer documents linking the vaccine to myocarditis, the heart inflammation issue. And they released it, but they redacted every page. So it was 148 blank pages. Imagine. They thought that was useful. They released that. And here's what Kennedy says about it, right? He says, the level of arrogance and contempt for the public in releasing a 100% redacted document is staggering. The CDC is thumbing their nose at the Freedom of Information Act. Without transparency, there is no such thing as democracy. Now, we don't have a democracy. We understand that now, right? We don't live in anything like a democracy. Anything you thought about America once is simply an idea and an aspiration. It's not true. America is in the business of war, and they're in the business of psychological operations in order to support that war. And the linchpin of all of this, of course, is the money, which needs to be propagated by the propaganda, right? So if none of this stuff is there, we would have something similar to a democracy, but that stuff is all there. So we're nowhere near that. And we'll see today how far we are from anything resembling the better angels of our thoughts about America, right? That's gone. We're not in that world at all. We got political prisoners everywhere. We got a completely a system in complete meltdown, right? So Kennedy goes on to say, you won't need an FOI request to read any taxpayer-funded data, right? So indeed, he's going on about, Kennedy here is going on about the arrogance now, the arrogance that it's come to, that they can release what are they even thinking? You know, it is absolutely about thumbing your nose at the American population, right? So for that reason, Ron Paul also went on about a few other things. You know, he had some really interesting things to say about homeschooling. He had some interesting things to say about the economic and financial illiteracy of Americans, and that's why he ties it to homeschooling. He says, if you have an education system that's out there saying that raising the minimum wage is going to fix the cost of living trouble, you've actually just created mentally ill, mentally handicapped NPCs as your population. And that's the point of your education system. So he says that's why he's gotten into homeschooling to the extent that he has, because he says that the reason why the education system in America is so poor and so shitty is a deliberate act of sabotage in order that the propaganda can spread much easier and with less resistance, right? So it's probably that deep, right? It's probably that deep, the awesome deep state, right? So now he's also predicting, and you had a few people do this yesterday, they're predicting a black swan event, right? You had Ron Paul say it during the Tucker Carlson interview, saying that there's some some kind of black swan event that is going to be used to reset the table, to make sure Trump doesn't make it, to make sure the deep state stays in power, to make sure the media is still able to conjure fears and things like that. So Ron Paul on the record yesterday saying it. A few people actually said it yesterday. You had Michael Flynn warning about a black swan event in the past 48 hours, right? So the idea here that something is being planned. Now, we can have our doubts, right? But just look at the capacity these people have. Look at what they're capable of doing. Look at the case of Peter Navarro, right? Look at what they're doing to Peter Navarro. Now, look at his statement yesterday or 2 days ago, right? So he's in jail. Peter Navarro is in jail. He's in jail now. He is currently in jail. A former member of the Trump administration, an executive branch official operating under executive branch authority, has been put in jail for what he did, right? So this is what he said. Justice Roberts took care to note that the reason for my denial was distinct from my pending appeal on the merits. That appeal on the merits will continue, and if I fail in that appeal after nonetheless serving my full prison term, the constitutional separation of powers. So listen to that one statement. No matter what, his sentence is done by the time his appeal is heard. So he's even if he wins his appeal, he'll have already served time for a non-violent crime. Imagine. So the constitutional separation of powers will be irreparably damaged, and the doctrine of executive privilege dating back to George Washington will cease to function as an important safeguard for effective presidential decision-making. There is much at stake here, and it is worth the fight. The partisan nature of the imprisoning of a top senior White House aide should chill the bones of every American. In Joe Biden's weaponized justice system, a Democrat-controlled Congress and a Justice Department, together with an Obama-appointed district judge and 3 Obama-appointed appeals judges, drove the Navarro Railroad right into prison. If anybody thinks these partisans and politicians in robes aren't coming for Donald Trump, they must think twice now. Scott Adams writes about this whole thing, saying, vote like your life depends on it, because clearly it might, right? Kaneko the Great writes about this. Biden's Justice Department shatters historical precedent imprisoning Trump trade advisor Peter Navarro for contempt of Congress, destroying a 250-year tradition of honoring executive privilege. Obama's DOJ didn't prosecute Eric Holder and Louis Lerner following contempt referrals after they invoked executive privilege. Bush's DOJ didn't prosecute Josh Bolton and Harriet Miers following contempt referrals after they invoked executive privilege. The Justice Department hasn't prosecuted executive officials who were instructed by the president to invoke executive privilege until now. The last time anyone was sentenced for contempt of Congress was 1948. Navarro, a Harvard-educated economist known for his efforts to restore American manufacturing, will serve 4 months in prison. He will turn 75 in July behind bars as a martyr for the regime. So that's what happened. That's what happened in America, right? And then you've got Ketanji Brown Jackson going on the other day about the handicap that the government must suffer because of freedom of speech, right? So Glenn Greenwald says that it's shocking to hear from a justice say this, right? But it is also no expression of the central view now embraced by most U.S. institutions. Online free speech is too dangerous, and the U.S. government must therefore police it. I've got another one here from Ketanji Brown Jackson. This is again from Glenn Greenwald, saying that she believes the free speech guarantee is an impediment to the government being able to do the things it needs to do. I appreciate Justice Brown Jackson for being as explicit as she is. She's speaking for American liberals here, and she's saying we can't allow free speech anymore. It's too dangerous. That's what's at the heart of the case. That's what is at the heart of the Biden administration's behavior. It's all at the heart of all these laws that countries throughout the democratic world are enacting to control the internet, that they believe free speech is no longer a luxury we can afford because disinformation is something that is too dangerous to merit, right? So now they're also going after, because Christine Blasey Ford, right? So we got one Supreme Court justice saying that. Now there's a full front assault on Kavanaugh today because Blasey Ford, who looks like the most mentally ill, stupid bitch woman you've ever seen in your life. She looks like an absolute retard, mentally ill psychopath. I don't see anything but mental illness when I look at her. She looks nuts. She looks like lobotomies I find gross. She needs a fucking lobotomy. That's how bad it is, right? She is just a miserable, sour old woman. Now she gets a book tour out of her thing about Kavanaugh and the rape train he ran on her. Now this is what Molly Hemingway, who is I think one of the most credible journalists in the game, this is what she says, right? Remember, this is what the media has done with here's one of the worst indictments you'll ever see of them. Look at the work. So Christine Blasey Ford Kavanaugh. This is a Supreme Court judge in America. If you remember, if you're not American and you weren't involved in what was going on at the time, when he was being nominated to the Supreme Court, this woman came out of nowhere and said he raped her with all of his college friends, right? And here's what we know about her: that she had this big hearing where she looked as mentally ill as she does yesterday. Just a wino lady, like drunk on wine and a pickled brain, right? Like she looks like every one of these batshit crazy women that are on MSNBC all day, listening to Rachel Maddow and hallucinating things. She just hallucinated this. So here's what we know. This is how many legs they've given this story based on the proof that exists that he raped her, which there is none, right? So this is what Molly Hemingway wrote. There is no evidence that Ford and Kavanaugh ever met. Leyland Kaiser said she did not have any confidence in her friend's story. So this is Christine Blasey Ford's friend saying, I don't believe it, right? Friends pressured Kaiser to change her story. All alleged witnesses strongly dispute the claim. Ford's father supported Kavanaugh's confirmation. So the woman's dad even said, no, right? Ford doesn't know the location. So the woman doesn't know where it happened. She doesn't know how she arrived at this supposed rape site. She doesn't know how she got home. Ford doesn't know the date or even the time of week. She's never offered any of these details. She somehow remembers she had precisely one beer, but no other details. Kavanaugh's contemporaneous calendars support his claim. Ford changed the date of the incident by years from her initial stories. Character witnesses from the time support Kavanaugh. Ford's first mention of Kavanaugh's name is 2012, after he became a national figure. False claims were made about Ford's inability to fly. Ford scrubbed her social media. Ford said she wanted to stay confidential, but first call was to the Washington Post. Ford's attorney admitted a motive desiring an asterisk by Kavanaugh's name. Ford has benefited socially, financially, and politically. Nothing in Kavanaugh's past remotely similar claim in the last 37 years, right? So she's doing the tour yesterday because of her book tour. It's an absolute mockingbird operation, mocking people, right? Just mocking people, mocking people. Imagine the amount of the lack of curiosity required for the media to never follow any one of these threads. None of them. They ignore them all. And now they're going to go and attack Kavanaugh and by proxy the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, while they have another Supreme Court justice saying, you know, this law thing is kind of hamstringing government. So realize the moment we're in. Just realize it. It's beyond anything you could have even imagined 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 8 years ago. We're in a completely different planet, a different reality, right? So, and it gets worse. It gets worse. It gets worse for America, right? You've got the let me get it back here. You've got the Letitia James, that cross-eyed, illiterate AG of New York, now openly threatening to take Trump's buildings away because he can't post the bond that's required for the appeal. Kevin O'Leary yesterday was on the television on the fake news going on about just how bad it is, right? So he slammed Letitia James on seizing Donald Trump's assets like Venezuela or Cuba. So he was on CNN talking about this. This may be great for the attorney general, but it is not good for America, he says. Forget about Trump. You think this is good for business in New York? You think this is good for business in America? To take a law that we used to protect people against buying refrigerators at an overpriced value decades ago and apply it against an individual that and then talk about seizing assets like he was in Venezuela or Cuba. This is a very, very, very bad look for New York, and everybody around the world is watching this. There was no fraud here in the context of people actually losing money. Deutsche Bank, who made the loan, was made whole. And let's make a penalty of $500 million against the crime apparently where no monies were lost. There are no $500 million bonds. Never been done before. Never. This law has never been applied. Forget about Trump. Nothing to do with Trump. Everything to do with America and New York brand. I love this state. My children live here. This is a horrible message to everybody around the world watching this. Absolutely horrific, right? Now, I love New York City. I love it. I can't go there anymore. I'm in Bitcoin. My former boss has the same problem. He's being a $3 billion fraud case right now. I don't know anything about if it's true or not, but I don't give a shit. It's coming from Letitia, a cross-eyed, illiterate prosecutor threatening to take away a building. Now, I think that Barry Silbert at DCG should face a penalty for whatever crime he did, but not from them. I don't give a shit. I don't care. These people are terrible. How can you take anything they say seriously? And I don't want to be in this position. I don't want criminals to go free, but how can you trust any prosecution that comes from this illiterate, cross-eyed idiot? It's impossible. It's impossible, right? So this stuff's pretty bad. We got the squatter, forget about the big picture stuff. You heard about this one in New York as well. You got a squatter who leveraged the squatters' rights, whatever stuff, right? Leveraged the squatters' rights stuff, and has now had the keys yesterday given to her. Let me find the story here. I don't know where I have it. Yeah, here we go. A 47-year-old New York City woman. So imagine, just think about property rights for a second in New York City, the supposed center of capitalism in America. Oh, they're threatening to take away a $400 million property, or maybe more, 40 Wall Street, a beautiful building. I used to take a boat when I lived on the ocean in Rockaway. I'd take a boat every day. I'd get off at the Wall Street Pier. I'd walk right up Wall Street, past the stock exchange where I used to, work regularly. I would work in the stock exchange all the time. I would go there and do TV hits. I met all kinds of interesting people in that area. I'd get my subway up to Midtown from there. So I would come up and walk by Wall Street. I'd see this beautiful Trump Tower every single day, gorgeous building right on a beautiful spot of New York. They're threatening to take it away. So that's the big stuff, right? What about this one? A 47-year-old New York City woman, Adele Andalero, has been arrested for attempting to remove squatters from her own Flushing, Queens home. While in the process of trying to sell the $1 million home left to her by her parents, squatters moved in and refused to leave. And because this is New York, where tenant rights are given after 30 days of illegal occupation, the squatter called the police on the homeowner and took her away in cuffs. In New York, you are now considered a criminal if you pay back your loans, defend innocent bystanders on the subway, and dare to be inside of your own home. New York is a total dystopian clown show. Isn't that right? Imagine, right? So very difficult on this day to be pro-America at all. And look, what America could be, I love it. My heart is there. You know what I mean? I if America can achieve the separation of money and state, we can be the America that we want to be. We can. It's not far away. There is some good news today, right? There is some good news. Here we go. Oh yeah, well the Washington State thing with now you don't have to pass the bar to be a lawyer there. You can not pass the bar and then go use lawfare against someone and strip them of their property. So things aren't going to get better in Washington State either. Right? But there is some good news. It's not all bad news today, right? It's not all bad news in America. Major win for Amos Miller, the Amish farmer. So anyone out there in Pennsylvania, you'll be happy to hear that you'll be getting your raw milk back. I know one of our Breakup folks does get their raw milk from Amos Miller. The court agreed to modify the injunction so that it only applies within the state of Pennsylvania, removing the ban on sales to customers outside of the state, thanks to all those who supported Amos, including Thomas Massey and Robert Kennedy. Now, you've also got BlackRock's destructive approach. This is an ESG thing, right? So Texas has removed its money from BlackRock because of their ESG posturing. So they had the following statement: BlackRock's destructive approach toward the energy companies that the state and our world depend on is incompatible with our fiduciary duty to Texans. It's very good news. Now, I haven't given you much update on what's going on at the border because it keeps changing. They're the Supreme Court, Court of Appeals. So once that thing straightens out and I can get my mind around it, we'll talk about Texas again. I think what's going on there is good, but it's hard to tell. But this is great, right? This is great. We got a little more good news. We got a little more good news over in Argentina. Our man Milei has shuttered and boarded the doors of the central bank. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? That's pretty optimistic, right? That's pretty optimistic. I like that. Now I've got one more thing, and I guess this is related to the Black Swan event, right? So today our theme is the orange coin can fly higher than the Black Swan. Now Thomas Massey was saying the following. Let me find the Thomas Massey quote that I got here. I got a good Thomas Massey quote, but I got to find it, and it's related to the Black Swan. All right, so you had the Black Swan predicted by what's his name, Flynn, and you had the Black Swan predicted by Ron Paul. Here's what Thomas Massey said too, and it's related, and I'll explain why. He says, "I have come to the conclusion that an economic catastrophe must happen before a majority of my colleagues will get serious about curbing out control of government spending. I don't know when these things will occur, but they will be the order of operations." And indeed, now my prediction is any one of these fake Black Swan events that shows the PSYOP people are willing to do anything to Americans. Imagine they're willing to put Peter Navarro in jail. They will do anything. It looks like they'll do anything to maintain their position, to make sure we never know what happened to Kennedy, to make sure we never know that the deep state organized a coup in 1963, and that the world we've been living in is a simulation of America. It's not even a close to real version. It's completely the function and creation of brainwashing and psychological operations. Now, my prediction is indeed another 9/11 might be planned for America. The difference this time, and what contrasts with what happened in 2001. Remember in 2001, everybody came to help America. Everyone supported America. Everyone said, "Oh, America, we're with you. We love you. Never let this happen." Now, you might hear that posturing this time. Stupid Trudeau might say, "Oh, we love you. We're great," right? But what I saw yesterday or 2 days ago with Obama going over there to the British and whatever was going on there sounds like things you can't say on a phone. That's why they have to meet in person, right? So he's over there doing this and doing that and doing his disgusting Obama shit. And so he's out there doing that, right? The difference this time is that the energy nations, the ones that are sick of buying the US debt that pays for these actions to be taken against the American population. Now, it's not the motivation of what's happening to the American population that's going to get them there. It's that they have to pay for it. Japan has to pay for it. Saudi has to pay for Americans to be threatened by their own government. Are they going to want to keep doing that? Are they going to want to keep supporting this thing? I don't think so, right? The difference this time is no one's coming to help America when we have our 9/11. Nothing's going to happen. People, in fact, are going to be withdrawing the financial support that allowed this to happen. They're going to be betting against America. They're not going to be buying government debt. They're not going to be buying oil only in US dollars. They're going to be buying it in their brick shit coin or whatever it is. But the world is decoupling from America. And America cannot scale the brainwashing this time around. The Black Swan simply will not have the effect that it would have had 10, 15, 20 years ago. They can't conduct a 9/11 style operation that will get everyone to believe, because the conspiracy theorist title has been, we're immunized. So one of the amazing things that happened with COVID is that while COVID was terrible, the vaccines were terrible, all of it, but the whole event ended up being a vaccination, just like RFK is vaccinated from the criticism of being a conspiracy theorist. The actual criticism of being a conspiracy theorist has become less powerful, right? Now, what I do whenever someone says conspiracy theorist, you know what my reaction is? I don't argue about any of the details. I laugh at people who believe the news. I say, "You believe the news? You believe the news?" Now, that's now my minimum, right? The minute someone believes the news, you can't argue with them. If someone says, "I heard on the news," they're mentally ill. They don't have an opinion. Don't confuse what you heard in the news with a political opinion. They're not the same thing. So anyone who tells you that they heard something on the news, don't argue with them. Laugh at them. You have to say to them, "You believe the news?" Well, you can have fun being mentally ill, full of anxiety, and poor. Do that. Go with the news. Go with the news. Right. Have fun. Now, if that makes them curious, you can open up their minds. You can use my Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management. That'll help you, right? Depending on, you can calibrate what kind of NPC they are. But it's one of the blows that actually does stun the NPCs, right? Being mocked about believing the news can work. Don't argue the facts. It will never work. These people are brainwashed. Don't do that. You have to mock them for being gullible. That's it. That's the only thing that will get them, that will make a crack in that shell that's been created around their mind. It works. Trust me, it works. It works. So, a lot of awful things in America today. A lot. It's bad. It's when people said it was going to get worse, today's one of those days. But good things are happening, and we're going to win. We're going to win. We're going to win. All right. What are people saying? He said, no, they don't. They don't sell chairs here. We don't do the chair selling business. I don't know what. I think he's just cleaning up after something. No, there's no. It's like there's not even any money at the club. You just pay, and then you have an account, and that's it, right? You have a number. There's no money involved. No money involved. All right. What are people saying? I gotta go. I'll go to Rumble quickly first because I didn't get the Rumble quotes yet. One second. I changed where my Rumble was on my phone today, so I was flipping around. All right, what are the folks saying? All right. Well, a lot of comments today. I'm waiting for the world to realize there's not enough Bitcoin for everyone, Don Bully says. I think Drew says, I think we're still early. Tom, good morning, Tom. Maybe we will see by 20. Hold on, it's a little loud. All right. Maybe we will see by 2032, 98% of Bitcoin will be mined. Drew asks, how are any waves in Bathsheba? Always, my man, always. Bonjour, gang. Connector says, good day, freedom freaks, Morand. Indeed. My local Bitcoiners are a great group. Awesome. We are the remnant that Ron Paul talks about. Indeed. Vito, good morning, Bitcoiners. Stupid MS Windows updates. Yeah, we don't like MS Windows. My network and sound. Watching this on a Linux VM because work won't support Linux desktops. Oh, that is good to hear. Glad the Amish are prevailing, Vito says. Yeah, it's good. My journey to Bitcoin started yesterday. Something happened recently with the show, The Sovereign Individual and Noster, and I started to see the future. What's happening? I'm full of ideas. Great news, Royco Cup. Vito says we're in a 100-year cycle where things shift, but this time the shift is for humanity, not the bankers. Yeah, there you go. We love it. All right. And Morocco, they're selling chairs. No, they sell chairs on most beaches, but this is just a particular little section of beach. If I went down that way, I could rent a chair, or that way I would rent a chair. It's about $10 a day US to rent a chair here, depending on where you go. Yeah, that's pretty common around Barbados. There's no like beach vendors though. There's no one selling you shit on the beach here. That's something I really like. He was doing the chairs. Yeah. My financial vaccine. Very good. Bitcoin is one sure fix for enigmatic economic tyranny. Indeed. Amen, Bitcoin Deb. The inevitable monetization of Bitcoin will pump energy into the right people who will just win harder and harder. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. As Nolan highlights, looks like it's the satanic elite's plan for our future. Come pretty far down the path to be able to change sure-looking destiny if it continues on. But we're going to win. How bad a loss of seriously bad World War III, economic collapses, and a total Mad Max for decades. No, we're going to avoid that. We're going to avoid that. We're getting it cleaned up quickly. Of course, the View had her on. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Can't wrap my head around the time of huge building schooling for kids. Homeschooling or bust. Yeah. Dropping bombs today. Dropping bombs. Going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. We're doing our best. The day we lost our government. Wow, what times. Yeah. Yeah. The money always follows the art. You got it. Check out Quality of Life, a 5-part documentary on New York City graffiti history. Cool, yeah. The deep state is saving us from Armageddon, for sure. For sure they are. Bitcoin says, watching the 1980 Shogun series, it's okay. Yeah, it's pretty good. I watched that one too. The new one is just incredible, though. I watched it again last night. It's just the best. The best. Bitcoin Dev, next, the New York Times. The smell of food is really awesome. It sure is. So good. So good. Rupar's family has a cabin. Yeah. Lightning Band. He is, I mean, I wouldn't be able to have a cabin a mile from him, if you know what I mean. Wouldn't work out. Good morning from Lake LBJ. Well, I got to change that name, man. We got to change that name. All right, team. That's all I got for today. I hope you're doing well. I hope the broadcast came through loud and clear. The internet was not quite the same today. I don't know why. It said I was definitely strong enough to do the broadcast, but it wasn't like off the charts fast as it has been the past few days. So let me know how it came in, and I shall see you all tomorrow. Thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks for coming.